Hello everybody, today the potential conclusion to the 2-year epic that is my fight against my Ferrari 430 Scuderia's incessant knocking problem. This is an issue which has haunted me, nay, hunted me over 2 years and across 2 cars. This is a problem that Ferrari themselves spent £10,000 trying to fix and were unable to. But is it the case that in true Rattarossa style, I've actually managed to sort it for about 50 quid? Well, let's discuss and find out. Before today's video starts, I want to say a huge thank you to all the people that have attended one of my summer RoadStr meets. RoadStr is an app that lets you connect with other petrol heads, organise drives, meetups and all that sort of stuff. I've been working with RoadStr now for a couple of years, and in that time the app has improved immeasurably. They've recently introduced Apple CarPlay functionality, and they now even have a RoadStr rewards system, enabling you to both earn and spend points with your favourite automotive distributors. And if you're annoyed you've missed out on the meets this year, don't worry, because there will be a whole bunch more and some really exciting stuff happening around Christmas. So, in order to keep up to date with all of that, make sure you've subscribed, hit the bell icon, and you keep an eye on the YouTube community page. That's where I post everything first, and in order to attend, you will need to sign up to the event via the RoadStr app, because I use it to control the numbers on account of the fact I like to pick smaller, more intimate venues so everyone can get to know each other a little bit better, and of course, it helps me communicate to everybody who's coming. So, a big thanks to them for sponsoring the channel once again. So, on to today's video. A brief recap for those who aren't quite sure what it is that I'm talking about. 2 years ago, I bought a Ferrari 430 Scuderia. Lovely, wonderful, amazing, never thought it would happen. But on the test drive, I noticed a knocking noise, a sort of metal on metal kind of, well, not like that at all, but anyway, I noticed a noise, and at that point in time, I wasn't really that worried about it because Ferrari 360s and F430s, they are famous for ball joint issues, and a knocking noise is a symptom of a failed ball joint. So when I was talking to the sales rep there, I said, look, there are a couple of problems with the car, including the knocking sound. They said, yeah, of course, we'll get it sorted, no worries. And I didn't really think anything more of it. So then when I came to pick the car up a few weeks later, I said to the sales rep, what actually was the cause of that knocking noise? And his response will stick with me forever. He said, oh, it's just because it's a Scuderia and it doesn't really have much interior. That's the sound of stones hitting the bottom of the car. It wasn't. So that was a little bit frustrating. Fortunately for Dick Lovett, who I bought the car from, I was actually due there a couple of days later on a Ferrari launch event for the new Portofino M. So I said to them, guys, I'm pretty confident this is not just stones hitting the bottom of the car, but I'm going to be back there in a couple of days. I'll be out for a good few hours, so while I'm out, can you have a look at the car? I arrived in the morning, they took the car out, the sales guy and a tech, they drove it back round and it went straight into the workshop. Sales guy came out and said, yeah, no, that's not stones hitting the bottom of the car, is it? No, it's not. And the thing with this knocking noise, I know a 430 Scuderia is not ever going to be a totally silent car. That's just not its nature. But what bugged me about this knocking noise was that, first off, it would just happen all the time. It was incessant, and it would happen when you don't expect it, and drove me nuts. In situations where you're just moving around a car park at low speed, it would just be all the time. But mostly what annoyed me was the fact that I knew this was a noise being made because presumably 2 pieces of metal were contacting each other that weren't meant to. And so, would you take a car on track if that was happening? No. Would you push really hard in a car with that happening? No. Are you going to spend all your time thinking about what could that maybe be? Yeah, you are. So anyway, they had the car in, and in the few hours that they had it, they replaced both the upper and lower suspension bushes. And they said this is probably going to help, but by the way, you are going to need some ball joints soon. Having just spent £175,000 on a car, I wasn't really overjoyed to hear that it was going to need work almost immediately. Anyway, it did appear to fix the problem. Then, about 150 miles later, it came back. And so the car then had to go back again for some more work. And this process essentially repeated itself for the next kind of 9 to 12 months, with them saying they'd done something, me getting the car back, thinking actually they had fixed the problem, and then after about 200 miles, it becoming evident that they hadn't. They replaced, according to them, basically everything. They replaced the shock absorber bushes, they replaced the wishbone bushes. At the end, they even replaced the damper itself. They pulled stuff apart, they cleaned it, they did all sorts. And every single time I was convinced they'd fixed the problem. But every single time it came back. And this started getting tiring. During this period, I developed a couple of theories. The first was that every single time they disassembled and reassembled the car, although they weren't fixing the problem, it was feeling like they had. So something they were doing, the disassembly and reassembly itself was doing something. But it wasn't lasting. And my other theory was that maybe at some point they really had fixed the issue. However, the problem with suspension components is that there are lots of them. And if one is worn out and you replace it, but then the others are also worn out, that may introduce a sort of unnatural movement, thereby prematurely wearing out the new components they've just put in. In other words, you'll be chasing yourself around all the live long day. And this means you'll never actually have a fully fresh new suspension. Speaking to other dealers and specialists, many of them have said that actually if they come to a car like this, what they'll do is just replace everything all at once. It's the only way really to be sure. Another theory that I had was that them being a main Ferrari dealer, they could only use authorized official Ferrari parts. And when it comes to 360s and F430s, it's well known that for ball joints and bushings and things, there are better alternatives out there. In the UK, we love a brand called Hill Engineering. They make new, uprated, better ball joints that are not just cheaper than the Ferrari parts, but more importantly, made to a better standard. And the general consensus seems to be that a Hill Engineering part will considerably outlast a Ferrari one. But Dick Lovett being a Ferrari dealer, they couldn't use those. So this eventually got to a point where they said they'd done everything and they still hadn't fixed the problem, so by mutual agreement, the car was returned. I loved it so much, however, that I wanted another one, so I did. I went and bought one and I test drove it explicitly for the purpose of seeing whether it had a knocking suspension. Having just had this nightmarish time with the last one, I didn't want to go through that again. So I test drove the car, and on the test drive, it was fine. Absolutely silent. Well, other than the fact it was decatted, so horrendously loud, but I certainly couldn't hear any of the familiar knocks to which I'd become hypersensitive. So I bought the car, and then by the time I'd got it home, about 100 miles later, it too was knocking. My first thought was, you know what, right, sod this, I'll just return it, I can't deal with this again. But after a little bit of soul searching, I realised that no, I really did love this model, and I was determined that I could get it fixed. My first thought, of course, was that, hang on a minute, Ferrari has spent over 10 grand fixing this. I don't have 10 grand to spend fixing a problem on a car I've just paid even more money for. The second one cost me more than the first. But then I thought, hang on a minute, Ferrari spent 10 grand and didn't fix the problem. So maybe that meant I could. So a deal was done with the dealer that they'd give me basically a couple of grand towards sorting the suspension issues, and then whether I fixed it for less or I wound up spending a lot more on it, that bit was my problem. So I figured, right, let's take a totally different tactic. Let's take it over to center gravity, the suspension gurus, the nerds of dampers and springs, because they'll know exactly what's going on. They will spend the time going into real detail, working out where this noise is coming from, what the possible causes are, and they'll be happy to fit the uprated Hill Engineering bits. So a while back, I took the car there and they had a good look at it, put it on all their suspension testing kit, and their conclusion was that the issue was the drop links. And I think track rod ends maybe at the front. So you get these here, and actually you can sort of feel that they're not great. There's definitely some play in these. They fitted them, and this cost, I think it was 100 odd quid or something like that for the parts. And I drove the car, and it certainly seemed improved, but again, a little bit later, the noise came back as it always had. So, on a second visit to there, brought the car in, they had a real proper look at it, and we found another cause of the issue, which was the lower suspension bushes. Now, if you're paying attention earlier, you may have heard me say that Dick Lovett did replace the lower suspension bush. This is one of them, and I believe the other is in here. So, at the bottom of your damper, so the damper goes here, and at the bottom of it, this is actually the piece that we're talking about. There's several elements to it. This is the bush itself. This is the bolt that goes through it, and it's actually got a screw thread in this end here and a screw thread on this end too. This end connects into its sort of mounting point, and then this end actually screws into the drop link, which then screws into the anti-roll bar. So this is all doing quite a bit. You see, so that goes in like there, and this then connects up to the anti-roll bar. So, and this is, you know, doing this and this all the time, and this is supposed to be able to rotate here so it can move, because obviously everything's sort of pivoting like so. And they detected that this definitely had an issue. We noted that it looked like it was quite off-centered, and it was leaning very far over to one side. With just a little bit of manipulation via a crowbar, they could actually create the exact noise that I'd been hearing. So we figured, right, we did replace these on the old car, and they also noted on the new car that it looked like it had ball joints at some point fairly recently. They all looked fairly fresh and new. So this was the only thing after the drop links that they could see were really causing an issue. So we said, okay, let's get these sorted. Now, the reason it's taken quite so long to get all this done is me. I've had stuff going on. Centre of Gravity are really, really busy. I thought I'd put myself in with them about a few months ago, but actually I'd never confirmed it. So we went in last week and got these done. Now, I replaced this with the Hill Engineering equivalent. And when these, the Ferrari originals, came out, we noticed something interesting. Now, I'm going to show you some of the footage from the day comparing this with the Hill Engineering item. And you may actually notice there are some differences between the two. The uprated one, which I think may be a Hill Engineering, but it came from Superformance anyway, in case you're interested, is what you'd expect of a traditional bushing. So essentially there's sort of three hollow cylinders. You've got the outer metal one like this, the inner metal one like this, through which the bolt goes, and we replaced these the bolts too. And then in the middle, you've just got another sort of rubber cylinder. That's the bushing, very basic. This doesn't work like that. This inside is a mono ball, so it actually moves around. It's a ball joint, another one. Didn't know that. And they were a little bit confused. See, in theory, I think the suspension should only, of course, travel in one direction, and I'm certain there is a benefit of some description to using these, but there are a couple of drawbacks. First off, it's very firm, and in a car like a Scuderia, you may want that. We did wonder if perhaps these were fitted to the Scuderia only and the regular bushing went on other models of car, but I checked the Superformance website and they said that the one they supplied fitted all F430s. Very often you find with these cars that the same part will fit the 360, F430 and the Challenge Stradale, but not the Scuderia. However, with this, not the case. And in any case, the only reason I'd actually ever gone for the uprated Superformance ones, which actually, come to think of it now, I don't think are Hill Engineering, so ignore me if I've said that, was not to save money. The Ferrari original is like £50 a go, and the Superformance one is like £40 a go. The reason I went for it was because it's considered a superior part. Now, in theory, the change from this sort of monoball arrangement to a rubber one would make the car a little bit softer. I haven't really noticed that at all. They're also fairly certain that these were original to the car. They're not in fantastic condition. They were certainly knackered, and what we were putting in was a new, fresh bushing, which certainly should have been an improvement of some description, though they did say maybe there'll be an adverse effect on the handling. In other words, the car might be a little bit softer. But you know what's really crazy? When we were investigating and making sure that I had actually got the right bit, I ran this part number through Eurospares, and what came back shocked me. this part, which I figured maybe they used it 20 years ago, it was rubbish, they discontinued it, superseded it, whatever. No, 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 no. This little guy has featured on every single Ferrari, from the 355 to the 296. Yeah, they were using it in the 90s and they're still using it now. I suppose you could say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, but they do break. This is one of the issues. The guys at Centre Gravity said, look, it's not a inherently bad design, although they were confused as to why a sealed bushing like this has a load of grease in it, because as far as they were concerned, the two sort of steel surfaces should, you know, just lubricate themselves. But in any case, they use this on everything. More than that, it was also used on a whole bunch of Maseratis from the time as well. So the likes of the Quattroporte, I think maybe the Grand Sport that have got used it as well. Even the MC12 uses this because underneath it's basically an Enzo, and that's just amazing. So replacing these cost me about £40 per side plus VAT, so call it 50 quid. The bolts, I think, were actually more money. The bolts cost more than the new bushings. These apparently have also been changed over time, and what I replaced them with were just the genuine new Ferrari uprated items. So these went in, everything was nice and easy, the damper assembly comes out without having to disassemble anything else, barring just taking the wheel off, and therefore you don't need to redo your geometry either. So, has it fixed the issue? Well, 200 miles in, and thus far, we're good. It seems, this isn't really very woody, is it? It seems to have sorted the issue, which is nice. Now, I don't want to say we've definitely fixed it, and there is still the odd knock here and there, but in situations where you'd expect it, heading a pothole, that sort of thing, very, very extreme bits of road. But generally speaking, the car has thus far been silent. I have been extensively testing it using the Scuderia for any and every journey that I can, which has been, of course, you know, terrible, but so far it seems to have stuck. So there we go. That's an update on that. I've actually had quite a few people message in and say they've got a similar issue with their Ferrari, and clearly I understand why, and it'll affect so many of them. The Scuderia, I think you're going to be particularly wary of it, just because there isn't an interior, so any noises will be transmitted through really effectively. But these little things, yeah, are on just about everything. Really curiously, in the 355, they're referred to as a silent block bush. And then for later cars, they're referred to as a ball joint. So it might be possible that Ferrari themselves have replaced these or revised the design, and they've got a number of different part numbers too as they've evolved over the years. So I presume Ferrari have noticed that there is an issue, and maybe if I replace them with just the regular Ferrari parts, which I might do at some point in the future, if I feel like the car's just not handling as well, then maybe they'll be okay too. But I'm going to leave it as it is for now, because it does seem to be working. The handling's not affected. Maybe there's even a hair less road noise, but that could be a placebo. And in any case, I'm a happy bunny, because this has been grinding my gears for about 2 years now. And I think we might finally have gotten to the bottom of it. And weirdly, this was the very first thing that Dick Lovett changed. And it's very possible that on the old Dick Lovett car, it wasn't these that were responsible for the noise anyway. There's a whole bunch of other reasons the car could make it. But maybe, for the new one, that was the culprit all along. In any case, it means I can get back to enjoying my car without being driven slowly mad. And if that's not a happy ending, I don't know what is. I also need to say a big thank you to Centre Gravity, Chris, Pete and Holly. They've been absolutely fantastic. And if you need anything suspension related done to your car, Ferrari or otherwise, give them a message. They are the best, and there's a very good reason I'm happy to wait for them, because they are always worth it. So, a big thanks to all of you for watching. Don't forget to hit the like button, comment down below, and subscribe if you haven't already. If you got this far in the video, you haven't hit subscribe, please do. We're about to hit 300,000 subscribers, and it's my birthday next week, and that'd be a lovely present. So, yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you for the next one. Bye-bye. I can make a horse out of these.